Hello, my name is Dr. Jessica Saunders of Saunders Vocal Studios. I'm so excited to be here today with Lisa Neher and Kendra Leonard to talk about their Micro Opera Festival next week. I am a voice teacher based in Jessup, Iowa, and I am teaching virtual vocal lessons right now. And I know both of these women and fabulous musicians and artists, I guess, from our collaboration last fall on some spooky songs for young singers for my students. They did some world premieres of their pieces last year. So I am so excited to be here today to talk about their opera festival. So Lisa and Kendra, could you just start with maybe tell us a little bit about how you both first met and how many projects you have collaborated on together?
Yeah, we met on Twitter, right, Kendra?
We did. Yeah, there's a really robust new music community on Twitter. We met that way and started talking about different projects. And we started out with a short piece for Arwen Myers, who's a singer in the Portland area.
Yeah, wonderful soprano.
She was looking for pieces that she could perform by herself or by accompanying herself with the piano. So Lisa set one of my poems and created this amazing song with singing and stomping and clapping, and it was a hit. And we were so happy with it that we just decided to keep working from there. So since then, we've done the spooky songs that you mentioned. We've done these micro operas, and we have some other works planned for the future.
Yeah, and we have a piece that was supposed to be premiered last summer, and then because of the pandemic has been pushed to this summer virtually with Opera Elect, a wonderful independent opera company in Boise, Idaho. So they'll be premiering Sense of Self, which is our opera about a female athlete grappling with a breast cancer diagnosis and what different treatment options will implicate for her life as an athlete and her life as a whole person. So that's coming out this summer, which we're super excited about too.
Great. And did you meet some of your singers in that same way for this festival? Was it on social media, or can you tell us just a quick bit about how you made contact with those artists?
Yeah, the artists that are performing, they're people that I knew or Kendra knew either in person or in some instances on social media. Zach Finkelstein, one of the tenors, we connected on social media during the pandemic. And he has a wonderful blog, or well, really now a piece of journalism publication, The Middle Class Artist, that talks about issues about classical singing business and what's going on in the industry and even classical music overall. Audrey Yoder, soprano, we met at University of Iowa. You know her too. We've sung in operas together at University of Iowa. And Ugo Vera was at University of Kansas when I was there doing my master's in composition. So we go way back. And then Kendra, talk about Maggie.
Yeah, so I have known Margaret O'Connell for more than 25 years now, since she and I were both performance students at the Conservatoire Américain in Fontainebleau, France. And she has had just this amazing career and does a lot of work in new music. So I really wanted to write something for her and her fantastic voice. Unfortunately, she was free and was interested in doing this with us.
Great, very awesome. So you already talked a little bit about your collaborations. How long would you say the process takes from beginning to end to make one of these micro operas as a composer and librettist? And can you maybe also talk about what's that process like? Like, how much back and forth do you do? How does that kind of work?
Yeah, one of the things that kind of preceded all of these projects was, even before the pandemic times, some hangouts on Zoom where we brainstormed different dream projects and also got to know the sorts of themes and topics and stories that we were both really interested in telling, and where we felt there were needs and sort of gaps in song, in opera repertoire that kind of needed some refreshing or perspectives we really wanted to bring. stories that we really wanted to bring, that I would want to perform as a singer, that I want to see as an audience member and compose, and that Kendra wants to write. And so there's always sort of those themes that we have in common, which are, feminism and women in sport. Kendra has a background in fencing. She swims. I'm a triathlete. So we have that interest. And also, feminism, not just for, women identifying characters, but, more diverse stories for male identifying characters, and really opening up different kinds of storytelling and different kind of characters. And then these plots were almost all developed in consultation with the artists who are performing them. So we talked to them and asked them, what do you want to sing about that you don't get to sing about? And Great. Then from there, Kendra starts to work her magic.
So I do a lot of research for these operas. Lisa interviewed the singers for a number of them. And then for others, we had sports figures that we knew we wanted to write about. For example, Lisa really wanted to have a piece about Catherine Switzer, who was the first woman officially registered to run the Boston Marathon. She was attacked on course. There were men trying to pull her out of the race. She ended up finishing. So that was one thing where I sort of dove in. I looked at Switzer's own site and her own account of what had happened. I looked at news reports. I looked at all the different media that had sort of surrounded that event. I looked at a bunch of still photos of what was happening, because there were pictures of the race organizer actually trying to pull her off course. So there were these amazing sports journalist photos, out there that I could use as I sort of started to shape that. And I thought, I want it to be true to what her experience was. At the same time, I didn't necessarily want to use her own words, because we are creating something that has to have a certain kind of flow. We want passages that are more lyrical. We want passages that are more like recitative. We want things that are sort of in between. So working on that was sort of, like having a picture of Catherine Switzer up on one screen and writing on the other, and trying to make sure I was doing this event justice. So for the other operas, I did research on those as well. One is about Babe Didrikson, super athlete, who was actually born here in Texas. And I did some research on her and her career. I did research on the Dame de Saint-Basement. This is the noblewoman that Margaret O'Connell sings, who is preparing for a duel with this guy who's trying to take over her lands and home. Mm-hmm. And for Zach and Ugo, they have more modern settings where they really wanted to address pandemic issues. But even for that, there was some research involved. Ugo has just moved to LA, so I set his opera in LA. So I did a lot of looking at photos, what is nearby, what kinds of things can he not go to right now because of the pandemic, but we'll be looking forward to going to see in this new city. For Zach, it's a very meta kind of piece. He sings the role of the singer who is worried about what's happening in the vocal performance world with opera and choral performances, and is worried. Will he ever be able to get back on stage? Is there ever going to be another opportunity for him to do the kind of performance that he really wants? Does he trust the institutions for which he's been performing? Are they going to pay him? We've seen going on with the Met, right? Mm-hmm. So, but in all of these, I wanted to have some sort of a resolution that was self-affirming, a resolution that was somewhat uplifting. So all of them have a trajectory in which there's a moment of crisis or a long moment of difficulty or a challenge, but there's ultimately an end that is positive. There's something to look forward to. There's a good outcome.
Yeah, we need that right now.
Yeah. That's part of our philosophy, really, is not that we shouldn't talk about things that are really, really dark or challenging if that's, there's important things to address. But part of the philosophy behind these and throughout a lot of our work is to keep the flame of hope going. Kendra will write, a draft, send it to me. We'll talk about, the things that we really want to pull out, or the shape of the story. As the libretto gets kind of close to being cooked, I'll start writing and send her drafts. And, one of the wonderful things about working with a librettist who has this, huge background, Kendra's a musicologist, a scholar, played cello for many years, is if I say something like, I'm wondering if I can get another line or two here because I need to build this like chord progression to a climax the way the music is flowed out. And I don't always know that in advance. Composing's a little mysterious. You can think the music will do one thing, and then when you actually play through it, you're like, we're not done. It doesn't sound done. Mm-hmm. And Kendra gets it because she understands all that stuff about harmony and form. And it's really wonderful to be able to collaborate and know that I can say, I could repeat this line a bunch, but do you have another line you want to write? Or, hey, as it's turned out, the melodic line now, I really would love this part of the phrase to be on the high note. That's kind of what has spilled out of me. Could we rearrange a few words to get a better vowel for the singer? And Kendra really gets those singer needs because she's worked with me. She's worked with Jessica Rudman, a lot of composers writing for voice. So there's a lot of back and forth and shaping together. It's really a really collaborative process. And I don't know, what do you think is the time it takes from beginning to end?
Came together really fast because we had ideas already going. Mm-hmm. It's like, for me, I get an idea and I sort of put it in the back of my brain and I don't actually write on it for a little while. I just let sort of my subconscious play with it, right? And then when it comes out, it's more shaped often. It's almost ready to go. So sometimes it's like that. Sometimes, we need more finessing or massaging of things to make it what we really want. So some of these were probably done in a week.
Wow, great.
And some of them took a couple of weeks, I would say. I don't think any of them took much longer than that. I mean, in part because they're very short, right? We're not writing, a 3-hour, 3-act opera where we have multitudes of characters and we have all sorts of different complicated plots or anything like that. So that helps make these quick, I think, to produce.
Okay, great. And with that, why did you choose micro operas and why did you choose unaccompanied works?
Yeah, well, that often came out of a few things. I've had an interest in unaccompanied singing for a long time. While I was still at University of Iowa, I started the One Voice Project, which was a curation of new unaccompanied works that people wrote for me or sent me if they had existing works. Because as you know, Jessica, we don't have an accompanied repertoire in our standard rep as singers, which is unusual. Every other instrument has that, and we don't. And that actually really, I'm passionate about that because that excludes singers from so many opportunities, from venues that don't have a piano, from opportunities, especially as a young emerging artist, where it might be the right decision for you as a young singer to do something that's a low paying or a free performance opportunity. And if you're not willing then or able to pay a pianist, who understandably, they're really busy, I don't blame them. But if you're not willing to do that or not able to, you can be shut out of a lot of those things that can make a really big difference in building your performance credentials when you're a young artist. And, I was watching my cellist friends and my flute friends and my pianist friends and my harp friends have all these opportunities to do outdoor performances, to do, sort of self-produced or sort of in-kind performances. And I was having to balance that. So that was one reason that I really dug into that. And so I think bringing that to opera was always going to happen for me as someone who believes in this so strongly. And then over the fall, what really led to this project was the conversation as I was having, with singers in particular. I have so many singer friends who were missing performance and they were missing opera. They were missing storytelling. They were missing getting into costume and interacting with props and the kind of physical storytelling, that really only happens for classical singers when you memorize and you have a work with a story with a beginning, middle, and end. And I'm like, well, I can't fix like the industry not being safe to be together. I can't fix the loss of income from gigs. But like, if we want to make opera, we can make opera, And it's really wonderful because I think a lot of us who have done virtual performing, it has been a really challenging combination of like listening to click tracks and rather than phrasing together, since we can't be together in real time, like having to have one person lay down the tempos and then the other person just has to adjust if it's in a choir, if it's art song. What's wonderful is there's none of that. How could we make this as grassroots as possible and as singer focused as possible? Like if you have an iPhone and a space of some kind, you can do these operas. And in fact, Ugo's and Zach's in particular are modern. They're set in somebody's living room, like, so that was the other thing is I would love us to be out of this pandemic as soon as possible, but I don't think that's going to happen immediately. We have a bit more to go. And I think there's a need now for the rep. I hope singers who watch the festival next week, like come by the score and do the piece, This is a rep for singers in pandemic and out of pandemic.
And I think that's really innovative because I think we were all wondering at the start of this, how is opera going to modify, right? So there have been a lot of those operas that people have done, Le Nozze di Figaro, and they've done Così fan tutte as, Zoom operas or whatever. But, that I think it's really awesome that you are both writing works that are kind of depicting the pandemic and written to be done, to be done in the living room or to be done, done showing what the life was like in the pandemic. And I think it's going to last then, to show those stories. So I think that's really exciting.
Yay. Yeah, we think so too. Yeah. And I really also take a lot of inspiration from Black Box Theater and sort of different theater forms. And, I work with composers on composing for voice, and composers come to me, and when they talk about opera, they've immediately envisioned a 3-act opera with orchestra. And that is a really exciting and cool thing to write. And also, opera can exist in other lengths and other performing forces. And that opens up a lot of really cool things, So I'd love to see a proliferation of many different forms and performing forces in opera. And I think that we're going to have a need for that as companies innovate and as a lot of like local small companies want to push the art form forward in ways that are a lot more agile than a big company with a lot of responsibilities and sort of stakeholders. We can't do that anyway as small independent opera companies, right? We're not a direct competitor, right? We're doing Così maybe with piano. We're not, so we're already not. So let's not try. Like, let's do what we can do really well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kendra.
I was just going to say that I love opera. I love opera as it exists, but I also really, really want opera to change. I think we're at a point where opera has to change. I think that, even as we pass through the pandemic, we have reached a point where people have become more comfortable with technology. The companies and performers who used to say, oh, no, I could never, I would never want to appear on somebody's television at home, right? They must come and see it. And I think, knowledge of accessibility issues has gotten wider and deeper. And I think that by us creating these operas and pieces that are longer as well, but by us creating opera in different forms and different kinds of storytelling, we're promoting a kind of opera that is more accessible, that has roles that people really want to sing and feel good about. I was talking to somebody just yesterday online, and they were saying, Don Giovanni's like a great title role. I'm supposed to want to sing that, but I don't want to sing that character. I want to sing somebody that I feel good about singing, right? I don't want to have to be him. That's just kind of repellent, and we do have all these operas in the standard rep that are problematic in a lot of ways. And I would love to see some of those, become less performed in favor of pieces that singers really do want to sing and that tell completely different kinds of stories.
Yeah, I agree. I think as a performer and me I think the virtual world is not going away after this. And I've enjoyed, because I live a little ways away from where I teach. Like, I've been able to see some of my students do their musicals on my TV at home with my 18-month-old, and it's some of those smaller companies can reach a much wider base by offering these virtual opportunities. So I think that's really awesome. What would you say for those who maybe don't quite know as much about opera versus art song? Like, what would you say makes these a micro opera versus just a Shana or like a long art song?
Yeah. So I come from the theater world. I have a theater degree, and every day in theater class, you do games, including telling stories where you don't get to say anything. So in terms of theater, in terms of storytelling, there doesn't have to be a single word, but there has to be movement. There's physical action, and even these words of theater and drama is doing. So I think that there's a really big difference when we talk about what is opera. To me, and opera can mean different things to different people, but for me, it is theater, it is doing. And so it's very important to me that opera has stage action, that it has an interactivity that is even more so than art song, and that there's actually like a reason for that to happen. And I, as a person who performs a lot of contemporary music, have certainly performed some new opera or staged works that didn't actually need any movement, that the movement didn't help and felt arbitrary because there was no relationship happening. There was no doing. It wasn't a bad piece of music. It just wasn't an opera, or it wasn't a piece of theater in my mind. And to me, opera is that. So there's always that element of like doing in these operas. And that is a huge part of it. And then also that, opera, when we have that, when we have memorized, when we have costume in place, we're drawing people into a world and into a moment of time for these ones in the past, or into this moment of time and this experience in a different way. I love art song, but when we add in that setting and costume, even if it's choosing which hoodie and sweatpants you're wearing in these pandemic operas, but that draws people in a different way that's very special. And it's a genre to itself.
Great. Kendra, do you have any different way that you feel like you approach the opera versus the art song that you write?
I think that when I'm writing a libretto, like Lisa says, I'm thinking about movement on the stage. I'm thinking about a setting. I'm thinking about how the character will interact with other things, seen and unseen. For example, there's an unseen character in Ugo's opera, Wide Awake in the New City, right? He interacts with someone else, but we never see who that is, or we never hear from them. So there's that, and we don't have to have interaction, but that kind of reaction to surroundings and the fact that the surroundings are somehow important, I think, is one of the things that differentiates opera from art song, right? Schubert doesn't say, if you want to perform Winterreise, you must have a backdrop of trees and you must shake the snow off the trees. And right, you could do that, you could make it theatrical, but for something to be born theatrical, I think it has to involve characters that are, again, like Lisa said, involved with the things around them. Costume, prop, setting, lights, and some sort of story. It doesn't have to be the Western arc that so many operas are in. It can be told in different ways, using different narrative techniques. But I do think that there is an overall story that we're telling with opera.
Great. I love it. Well, I think actually I'll just end with just tell us, how can people get tickets to your festival, and then what particularly they should expect throughout the week next week?
Yeah, so I'll drop the link in the comments when we're done, or you can visit www.lisanehermusic.com and then click on the Opera Festival tab. The operas are being released once a day at 5 o'clock Pacific, starting next Monday, the 22nd, and going till Friday. So it'll be one a day for 5 days. They drop at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. And you can just tune in there if you want. But you can also go to that Opera Festival tab on my website and sign up to get a reminder to get that email with the link sent right to your inbox each day so you won't miss it. And you can watch them as they premiere at 5 or anytime after that. And then we also have a really wonderful opportunity for people to get to know the artists and ask us all your questions. And that is on Friday following the final premiere at 5:10 p.m. Pacific. We have a talkback reception. And that is also something that you can sign up for so that you'll get the Zoom link on my website. And all of the festival is pay as you can. We're all about accessibility here. So people are welcome to send donations, and the website will tell you where, and that will allow us to split those proceeds between all the artists. So it's a really grassroots effort that we're doing here. Everything is evenly split, and also we wanted to make it accessible to anyone. We know the pandemic has been tough on people's finances, and so no one is excluded from watching these. And then they will be on YouTube to enjoy for the rest of the time to go forward. So yeah, we're really excited to share them, and we hope people will tune in and enjoy these little offerings, like little gems, each day of the week.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Any other last comments you want to say as we sign off?
Thank you so much for having us, Jess.
Yeah, thank you. It's so great to talk to you.
Yeah, it's so fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing all the operas.
Yay. Thanks so much, Jess.
Yep.